Hey Lucia, hey everybody. Yeah, I guess we might as well go ahead and get started. Let's see, Alexa can't make it today, so we will persevere as best we can. Let's see, so latest things on Animesh development. It's not the most exciting week. What I've been working on lately is complexity limits and other constraints. So things like making sure that you can't create an overly complex Animesh. There's also going to be a limit on how many you can have attached at one time. Currently the limit is set to 1. That's probably what we'll go with for Project Viewer at least. In addition to any limits that are already imposed due to land impact calculations and so forth, I'm also adding a ceiling in terms of number of triangles. So we need to I don't know the exact value yet. If anybody wants to nominate content that they think is sufficiently well made and not overly complex that we can take a look at, I'm happy to take that into account. The sample stuff I have available, including some stuff from content creators as well as from inside the lab, suggests that most things would probably fit within about a 20K limit. But anyway, if anybody wants to comment on that, I'm happy to listen. Let's see. Based on scale, we have nothing currently. What kind of Polyscale? What kind of thing are you thinking about for scale? Yeah. We've talked about this a few times. The scale question. We don't really have any specific new limits related to Animesh scale currently, so it's going to be the same as for avatars, I think. If we need to get more complicated than that, then we can look into it, but haven't done anything with that so far. Let's see. Lucia asks a triangle limit to block attaching or rendering. So let's see. The triangle limit is going to be for all Animesh objects, whether they're attached or not. So if you're trying to make something into an Animesh, or you're trying to link together multiple objects to make an Animesh, then it's going to check that limit before going forward on it. Lucia asks a linking block. Yeah, so I mean the enforcement stuff is going to be checked at the time that you're trying to link together multiple objects, if one of them is an Animesh, or at the time that you're trying to set the Animesh flag on an object on a link set. So that should make sure that everything is kept underneath the limit, whatever we wind up being. Let's see. People seem to have different opinions about 64-meter giant titans. I don't know. I don't see a lot of 64-meter tall avatars today, but I don't know if it's theoretically possible to make them. It probably is. Yeah, I don't know. So is it worse to have a 64-meter Animesh object versus a 64-meter non-Animesh avatar? Dragons. I hope we have dragons. Guys, I hardly see any dragons in Bento land. I haven't looked for a while, but you know, if you look at the set of bento bones, it's basically what you'd need for dragons. So you know, dragons. Let's see. Polysale says animations would be scaled up to a matter of 32 times the distance that they're presently at for a human avatar. You mean just a human-sized avatar, or do you mean that the behavior is going to be different on an avatar as opposed to on an animesh? Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, it's possible we'll need to add some kind of a scale limit. I'm not saying we won't. I'm just saying I haven't looked at it yet. You know, probably once people have a chance to start playing around with it, we'll get a better sense of, you know, what the effective limits are. Yeah, you know, if it's too horrible, we'll set a limit. It's not, the goal isn't to have, you know, one animesh object per region because nobody else can fit. Yeah, well, I'm kind of kidding about the fit. Of course, they're not physical, but it's it looks kind of ridiculous if you've got something that large relative to everything else.
You mean we can't put hundreds on our sim?
Well, I don't know how many it's going to be at this point. The other constraint thing I wanted to look at is land impact, if we should be doing anything else with that. Oh, and avatar rendering cost. Lucia says the try-count link blocker will affect non-animesh link sets. No, it's purely a check if you're trying to link together objects which contain animesh prims, or if you're trying to make a you know, an object, a link set into an animesh. They do. Seriously, you say 50K? As far as I can tell, your models are all like 5 or 7.
I'm thinking about all the things that people like to link to themselves, you know, clothing and everything else.
Yeah, that's a point. It's you know, everything is going to have to fit within the limit, since the, you know, linking them together is going to be the mechanism for you know, for adding things like mesh clothing to them. I don't know if there are any examples out there where we actually have that type of stuff available right now. Yeah, the intent is definitely to set the limit low enough to encourage people to think about optimization, and the general policy is that we're going to, you know, start as restrictive as possible, and then see how things go in testing. It's always easier to become less restrictive over time than to become more restrictive after people have already started playing around with stuff. So if I'm erring in the initial values, I'm going to be erring on the low side, but it's it's something that can be tweaked over time.
It's also worth stating that I don't always make my meshes. I mean, like I'm working for Zuby now, they make the meshes. So I have to lobby for more efficient meshes.
ZubiCat is still under 20, isn't it? I think I was looking at that earlier.
Yeah, it's still pretty good.
I would agree with Madhu, and also may I suggest that once you get Animesh into production, if you're going to put any limits on it, that maybe when the viewer says, no, you can't upload that, it's past the limits, then maybe you give a helpful link to the SL Wiki where there'd be some helpful information to how to make normal maps for those that don't know how.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, the stage at which you create the Animesh actually isn't at the upload stage, right? Because you can upload a mesh and use it as an Animesh or as an avatar mesh, depending on what you do with it. But there's but then you can subsequently edit it to turn it into an Animesh, and that's the point where we're actually checking. But yeah, obviously trying to make the information more widely known is a good thing. I don't. There's a question about seeing poly counts of individual entities. Yeah, do we have? So we don't have any LSL capabilities for that currently. Yeah, just for my own use during development, I've added a new diagnostic display to make it easier to see how many triangles are getting shown for each object, but there's not a, maybe there's not anything more convenient already out there. And I wouldn't think a render cost is really being equivalent, since it definitely has its share of issues, as we've discussed before. Oh, you're not talking about avatar rendering cost? So what, do you know what the debug setting is? Yeah, anyway, I will file a JIRA about the question about the adding an LSL ability to query that stuff. It may or may not turn out to be in scope for this project, but it's a good thing to think about.
We'll definitely be able to tell between human and or resident and avatar or Animesh because of the hair, though. None of the hair will work on these Animesh with that low of a score. Well, that low of a triangle count.
Prim hair, yeah, no prim hair. Yeah, I don't think we've tried anything that has any mesh tri-based hair yet. Question about when you can start playing with Animesh. I really hope it's pretty soon. The only significant bits that I'm currently looking at are, these constraints, and then trying to fix some of the matrix stuff, especially for attachments. There's a couple of bugs that we should probably also fix before we go to PV, but the best case scenario, it should be pretty soon, but it's, you never know till it's out there, because you can always have new stuff come up. Oh, not. So the question about triangle counts was not for LSL. It was just to make it easier to find in the UI. Yeah, I'll mark that down. Is the orientation still rot-based? I haven't changed anything since last week. I've been working on this constraint stuff. So it's still possible we'll wind up changing it, but what I have now is just it's just matching the root joint basically to the object location and rotation. The root joint is the root of the skeleton. It's the parent of the pelvis. That may only be internal. I'm not sure if the root itself is actually something you can modify in the DAE or not.
Kathy would know that answer, probably.
Question, try count is variable based on LOD as well. Yeah, what I'm looking at right now is the try count of the highest LOD. I know we've had various questions about, incentives to create or not create lower LODs, and I'm just not getting into that at all. I'm purely looking at the highest LOD for purposes of this calculation.
It would be.
The question was about the root joint. Internally in the viewer, we have a root joint that's a parent of the. I think its only child is the pelvis. And I didn't remember if that was part of the skeleton that was accessible to modelers, or if it was just an internal thing.
No, I believe it's just an internal thing.
Okay. So you can basically read pelvis for root in that case.
It'd be really interesting if you were going off like the lowest LOD. Or, well, people would just cheat it. Forget it.
For some values of interesting, yes. There's a question about floating joints or attachments. I'm not sure what that's referring to. There was a time when the attachments sort of weren't tracking correctly with their bones, and in the testing, that part I think is fixed now. Looks like somebody's demoing a large avatar here. Polysale asks about what does the end pelvis bone follow? Well, in the attachment case, it's following the attachment point of the joint it's attached to, so that then it tracks correctly as you're waving your arm around or whatever. Let's see. We have a question about something that looks broken on the official viewer. I'm not seeing what the particular problem is. Is this just because we have giant people, or is there some graphics glitch? Yeah, Polysale, I'm not expecting this to be a huge issue in terms of performance, but yeah, we don't really know the numbers until we've got more data. The reason I'm not super worried about it is because we're actually basically doing the same thing already in our code in some places. Anytime your avatar is sitting on something, that's effectively a skeleton that's getting updated every frame based on the matrix of something else. So in this case, you're just updating your skeleton every frame based on the position of a joint in another skeleton. So it's still just an additional matrix. It has to be updated in the avatar first, of course, but we'll have to give it more test driving to be sure. Let's see. We had a question about updates for the server-side baking work and the what was the other one? EAP. EAP. I think is it Ryder here? Ryder, anything new on things EAPly?
Things deeply. I've almost got my settings objects correctly passing into to Winlight, and once that's in, I'll have I'll be a little more comfortable giving better timelines.
Nice.
Yeah. Right now, as long as you want just a black sky and darkness in the world, it would be great. But I suspect people want something a little more interesting than that.
Goth compatibility. That's important.
Yeah, there we go. Goth compatibility.
All right. And then for the baking stuff, it's over to QA now. The update for Anchor has the update ready for increasing the resolution, and we just need to do the testing on that functionally, and also make sure it's not going to cause all our little bake hosts to fall over, which would be a problem. So that's just the first step of Bakes on Mesh, but it's it's a key one, and it'll be good to get that out. I see the discussion in chat about alpha stacking, but the short answer is I don't know anything about alpha stacking, so I'll let you guys carry on with that one. All right. Any other questions or anything I missed in the scroll back?
Oh, just to be sure, I just went and double checked the avatar skeleton XML file, and there is no root bone. The lowest bone or the root for the avatar skeleton is the M pelvis. And I looked over the avatar lab XML file, and there's no mention of any root bone in there. So it looks like it's internal. So
Okay.
would that be at, like say in Maya, if you wanted to simulate that root, I'm assuming it would be at XYZ coordinates of 0, 0, 0?
I've got to look at how we're handling that. I would assume it's going to be the same location as the pelvis, since we don't have any. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Even the pelvis has a location, right? It's got an offset of 1 meter up or something.
Right, and the offset
So I think
is from...
the root may be the thing that's the offset from, right? So there's this sort of ultimate coordinate system that's the base of everything.
That's what I'm figuring. Is, because the M pelvis is it determines its offset from the center of the grid in Maya, which is 0, 0, 0 for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Okay.
That's...
So I guess root is 0, 0, 0, kind of in the local coordinates of the object, whatever that means.
Yeah, I think I've seen Avastar use a root at that coordinate. Because sometimes when you export out of Avastar or out of Blender, it will give you an extra node or an extra bone. So the root bone, or the root, is not actually a bone that you could rig to.
No.
Okay, that's what I figured.
chance to have alpha masking available on the baked result. Doesn't the server-side bake already have alpha in it? I'm pretty sure it does, in the sense that it incorporates the result from your alpha wearable. So okay, so unless there's something about the question I'm missing, I think that's already in there. On the mesh, not on the avatar. Well, yeah, that's the idea of supporting bakes on mesh. You know, the first step is just to do the baking and produce the textures, which, you know, we do now, but we can only apply them to system avatars. The later stage of the project then is to provide a way that people can apply those baked textures on their mesh objects or mesh avatars. So I don't have a time frame for that, but that's a follow-on to the server-side baking update that's in the pipeline right now. All right. Well, you know, that's the short summary. We've got the texture baking updates in the QA pipeline, and cranking along on Project Viewer for Animesh. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. If we don't have any other questions right now, we can call it a day and go back to doing other stuff.
The texture baking, this is only on avatars, but it doesn't seem like it would be a whole lot of work to do this for like regular res meshes too, couldn't we?
I mean, once we had a mechanism for doing it on avatar meshes, then the only other thing you would need to apply it to non-avatar meshes would be some way to figure out, you know, whose avatar's mesh you're supposed to be using. Yeah, I think ultimately what you'd want would be the ability to, you know, for each you know, Animesh type mesh to be able to generate its own bakes, and that's one of the things we've talked about as a possible kind of second stage for Animesh once we've got the basic animated object stuff working, and once we have the bakes on mesh working.
I mean, bakes on mesh is kind of overboard for regular meshes. I mean, really, it would be cool just to have another layer to like throw dirt on or something like that, or blood or whatever. But it's interesting, you know.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I think once we have the basic mechanism for saying, okay, this big thing goes on this mesh, then we can push that in some different directions. Let's see. We got a question about bug 134260. These guys are getting long. Users from different viewer don't see Animesh stop animating when it is selected. Yeah, I don't. I haven't had time to think about this too much, but I don't. It's not obvious to me why you would want to do that. You know, the fact that somebody has it selected is really kind of local to their viewer, so I'm not sure why that information would need to be propagated out to anybody else. Oh, sorry, I had myself muted. The intent is that the bakes on mesh does replace some of the onion layer system, some of the applications for onions today. You know, basically you're doing the compositing inside the baking service rather than by explicitly layering a bunch of polys on top of each other. Yeah, sorry, Lucy, I was answering you, but I had myself muted, so you weren't hearing me. Yeah, I don't. Bug 134260. I don't see any reason that the information that a mesh is selected would need to be propagated to anybody else. That seems weird. So I'm kind of doubting that we would do anything along those lines personally.
My little black suit here is an onion layer that I'm forced to put on this avatar because you're taking so long with baking.
Oh sure, now I'm the bad guy. Possibly supervillain, anyway. Yeah, there's a question about whether onion avatars are supported. I mean, not intentionally. They work because of the way our system works, but they don't necessarily work extremely well because you've got the potential for Z-fighting and because you've got content complexity issues. I mean, yeah, regarding the avatars stopping when selected, I don't think they stop for other people, do they? Your own avatar gets paused, and the way that Animesh is implemented, your Animesh objects will also get paused when they're selected. But it's purely something that's happening inside your own viewer. Nobody else really is affected. Yeah, I don't know any reason you'd even want to propagate it outside your own viewer. The only point of the pause is that it makes it easier to manage things that you're trying to edit. It's it's distracting when stuff's jumping around, but nobody else is trying to edit it. They don't care. Yeah, no, I think it was just filed based on, what their expectation was when they were testing it. There's not any documentation that says it's supposed to be one way or the other. But we probably don't want to do that. As you know, there's a considerable gap between accepted and something that actually gets implemented. Yes, mind the considerable gap. Are bugs remaining showstoppers worthy of holding up a project viewer release? There's one or two that are distracting enough that they would just be annoying to everybody if they kept stumbling into them. Those are the kind of things we're going to try to fix. Stuff that's more corner casey, where if you turn in a circle 3 times and jump up and down once and change your default color to red and it crashes, that kind of thing. It's we don't worry about that kind of thing for Project Viewer. That's hypothetical, by the way. As far as I know, that's not a real bug. Let's see. Questions about forcing you to make your own LODs. No, there's no changes along those lines planned for the mesh uploader. We have had some discussions about trying to encourage people to upload items with good LODs, whether those are automatically generated by the mesh uploader or manually generated. But there's certainly not going to be a requirement that they have to be made manually.
Speaking of mesh uploader, does anybody know, and I guess I should just look myself if there's a JARA, on when you have more than the limit of bone weights in a mesh, that it does not, the skin weights option is not checkable, but it does not tell you that you have too many bone weights. Did that make any sense? I'm sorry.
When you say too many bone weights, you mean you're rigged to too many joints?
Correct.
Yeah, there's a bunch of limits that are enforced in the uploader, but we give pretty uninformative feedback. Like you have to look in the log file to see what the problem is or something.
Well, there's just no
obviously
feedback.
That's ripe for improvement. I think in that case there is feedback somewhere, but it may not be any place that's very discoverable. Obviously it should be actually exposed in the UI for that sort of thing.
Avastar does show how many bones you are rigged to.
Yeah, and in MyStar there's a thing called collision bone names, which not collision bone names, skin cluster bone names. What will tell you all the bones that your mesh is rigged to. So you'd have to count them. I don't have that in there.
Well, like the other day, I forgot to remove unused influences in my mesh, and I tried to upload it, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why in the heck I was not getting the option for skin weights. And then finally, I figured it out. I had too many bones influenced on my mesh, so got rid of those, and it uploaded just fine. But there was no message to remind me, "Hey, idiot, you've got too much stuff rigged."
I'd say about 99% of the time, if you don't get the skin weights option when you go to upload, you've got too many bones rigged to that skeleton.
Also, if you're rigged
That
to
would be
bones
nice.
it's never heard of, that's another way to get it to complain at you, or fail to complain at you, as the case may be.
Right, exactly. If you have a bone that's not, say like a locator or something accidentally got in there, or if even a single bone is misspelled or has a capitalization or a lowercase that's in the name that is not correct, that will also cause it not to upload or to get the skin weights.
Yeah, the Mesh Uploader UI definitely has its share of issues, and probably several other feature shares of issues as well. It's just, just a matter of resources. I haven't had a chance to work on it recently.
Is there some kind of limit as to like how far the vertices can be from each other without some kind of mesh face connected to them? I'll just say that I tried to upload some nails, some fingernails, just fingernails and toenails, and it wouldn't let me do them both together. But as soon as I detached the fingernails from the toenails, I got weight uploads. So I don't know what was going on there though.
Some kind of a check for coincident vertices or something?
I can only guess that it has something to do with how far the vertices were from each other, the groups of them. I mean, I don't know
The
why
degenerate
else they have a
triangles.
problem.
Degenerate triangles could make it unhappy too, I guess. So, yeah, if you do get these mysterious failures, I would suggest looking in the log file. It's not the ideal way to communicate this stuff, but it does sometimes point you in the right direction to figure out what the problem is. And if you do have a model where it refuses to upload, but it doesn't give any information at all, even in the log file, why don't you send it to me and let me know about it. I'll take a look, and at the very least we can make sure that we get some log file message out, even if we don't do anything smarter. Well, I hope soon, but probably not next week. Alright, well, I guess that ought to do us for this week. Let's see, we'll keep you posted, and guess I will see everybody next week.
Okay, thanks, Fear.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming all. Have a good one.
Trader.